On a quiet, dark night, Karen, a woman who always considered herself the one who knew everything, entered an area no one expected, where everything would change forever. But did she realize that she had awakened an unprecedented nightmare? Welcome to the Karen Karma channel. Let us know which device you're watching from. Leave a comment below. Maria, or as we like to call her, Karen, is the chairwoman of the Homeowners Association, HOA, in my neighborhood, and she views that position as absolute power in her neighborhood. With this role, Karen feels not only entitled to run things, but also to decide everything, from street repairs to choosing the colors for the houses in the neighborhood. Everyone in the neighborhood knows that if they want to do anything, they need Karen's approval, and this never changes. She never accepts any opposing views, and if anyone dares to propose an idea different from hers, they are immediately enlightened by her until they admit that Karen is always right. Karen not only makes decisions about the trivial matters in the community, but also interferes deeply in matters that have nothing to do with her. Until one day, while walking through the familiar neighborhood, I found Karen starting with curiosity at an old shed on the corner of the street. The iron door was rusty and dusty, but Karen couldn't help but notice it. "No one cares about this shed," she muttered, her eyes lighting up. "Surely, no one has any plans for it." I'm sure Karen was staring at the shed, imagining all the things she could do to improve the area. Everything here could be recycled. I'll make a reform for the neighborhood, just like I always do with everything else, she told herself, as if she were saving the whole neighborhood from the neglect of others. This shed could become a great community space, Karen continued, muttering, as if she had already decided everything, even though no one had asked her. "If I don't do it, who will? Anyway, I'm doing a good thing for everyone." That very night, when darkness covered everything, Karen sneaked toward the shed like a plump ghost. She carefully prepared a crowbar, a blinding flashlight, and rummaged through every corner of the shed to find a spare key. But no, she knew that everything had to be done carefully, quickly, and without anyone noticing. She looked at her watch, realizing that time was passing too fast. The pressure she felt was growing heavier. But Karen continued, despite not knowing who the shed belonged to. Karen stood at the threshold of the shed, her sharp eyes scanning every dark corner of the area. Everything was so quiet that she could hear her own light breathing. The shed had been abandoned for years. Its lock was rusted, but Karen couldn't let that stop her. She took a deep breath, glanced around once more to make sure no one could see, and carefully stepped forward. Her footsteps were soft, and the dry grass creaked beneath each step like a warning. "This is it," she whispered to herself, then gasped as she approached the lock. She reached out and inserted the crowbar into the old lock. Sweat began to soak her forehead as she used all her body strength to push. "This piece of junk is giving me so much trouble," Karen muttered, her lips tight, using all her strength while trying to keep calm. Her forceful movement made her hands shake, but she couldn't stop. She knew that just a little more, and the prize would be in her hands. After a few seconds of tense struggling, she heard a sharp crack, and the lock clicked open, filling her with a sense of victory. Karen couldn't hold back her joy. A small smile flashed on her lips. She pushed the shed door open, and the dark space welcomed her inside. She turned on the flashlight, and its bright light illuminated the hidden corners, cutting through the darkness. The whole room seemed to be turned upside down, as if a long-kept secret had just been uncovered. Everything was drowned in an oppressive silence. But as the beam of light swept across every nook and cranny, Karen suddenly stopped, her eyes wide in disbelief at what she was seeing. It was not what she had imagined. Karen stood frozen, her eyes wide, unable to believe what was unfolding before her. She had thought she was simply going into the old storage room to find some discarded items, but the scene before her took her breath away. But these items were not just cutting-edge technology. They were devices that only people working in security agencies, top experts, could have access to. She saw a curved screen computer with control buttons and encryption software that looked like something from the future. Next to it, a tall filing cabinet with a lock and carefully sealed, as if it were protecting great secrets that the world was not meant to know. A pile of specialized communication equipment, headsets, microphones, signal transmitters, all arranged neatly, as if this were the command center of a secret organization. Yet, these things did not alarm Karen. On the contrary, she saw this like a newly unearthed treasure, until her eyes caught a familiar symbol. On the hard drive containers, stacked in rows, were security labels and secret codes that were sealed tight. And on all of these items, the symbol appeared, FBI. Damn, what is this? Karen exclaimed, her voice trembling. She felt like everything around her was suddenly turned upside down. FBI. How did it get here? She carefully opened a filing cabinet, seeing solid locks and neatly arranged documents inside. The hard drive containers were stacked neatly, each one sealed securely. A thought flashed in Karen's mind. Maybe it's just someone trying to imitate the FBI. FBI. So what? She asked herself, chuckling lightly. This logo doesn't mean anything if they're just left here like this. She didn't feel any fear. On the contrary, she was even more excited about the business opportunity. Karen looked around, gently tapping on the filing cabinet, then continued observing the equipment around her. If no one comes to take them, we could make them ours. No one would know, right? Bold ideas began to form in her head, and excitement rose. A treasure trove of unexploited technology. If it wasn't anyone else's, it would surely be hers. So, without further thought, Karen began moving the machines out of the warehouse. As for the documents, she'd burn them like scraps of paper. But when the third machine was moved outside, suddenly, the alarm lights flashed bright red, like a sign of an incoming storm. The sirens blared loudly, cutting through the stillness of the warehouse. Karen froze, unable to move. She turned around, but before her was a thick darkness rushing toward her. The situation worsened as the sound of vehicles echoed from afar. It was the growl of engines, like a predator charging forward. The dazzling headlights lit up the empty road, with black SUVs speeding toward her, kicking up dust in the air. The whole road was now illuminated by the flashing green and red lights. The vehicles slammed on their brakes, the wheels skidding on the road, then stopping abruptly, as if confirming that no one could escape. The car doors opened with a sharp click. An FBI task force stepped out, one by one, in glossy black suits, sunglasses obscuring their sharp eyes, and handguns clicking coldly in their hands. They advanced toward Karen with stern faces, like invisible ghosts drawing near, unavoidable. Karen stood motionless, her body stiff, as if frozen in the cold scene. A tall agent, with a cold expression, stepped toward her. His voice rang out, full of firmness. Stand still. Put your hands up. Karen felt her chest tighten, and all the confusion overwhelmed her. The world around her seemed to spin, and the footsteps echoed loudly as the team of agents surrounded her. The storage door was slammed open, and another agent approached the broken lock. He looked inside and growled, "Illegal entry." She's been rummaging through everything. Sweat beaded on Karen's forehead. She tried to hold on to her reasoning, but his words hit like a hard slap against her self-justification. I, I was just passing by. I thought this was an abandoned warehouse, she stammered, her voice trembling. But her weak explanations did nothing. Every action of hers had been watched and recorded, clear as an undeniable crime. The fear surged, and Karen knew that at this moment, it was too late to save herself. The agent stood silently, only the sound of her rapid breathing filling the tense silence. One agent stepped forward, approaching Karen with a cold expression. He suddenly twisted her arm behind her back, the strong gesture leaving Karen no time to react. Instantly, he cuffed her hands, the coldness in his actions marking the end of all her efforts. "You are under arrest for illegal entry into federal property," he said, his voice as cold as ice, devoid of any emotion. Karen panicked, her eyes wide, her mouth constantly shouting, "No, I didn't mean to. You're making a mistake, really. I'm the president of HOA," she screamed, trying to straighten up in panic. "The FBI has no right to arrest me. I have control over everything that happens in this area. You can't violate that." Her voice rang out resolutely, as though believing her title would save her from the current situation. The agent showed no reaction, calmly pointing to the security camera that was clearly recording every action of hers. "All of your actions have been recorded," he said, his voice as cold as before, with no trace of sympathy. Karen fell silent, her eyes wide with shock, unable to justify herself. At that moment, another agent, standing nearby, looked at her with clear disdain. "Do you really think you can break into an FBI warehouse without being noticed?" His voice was mocking, filled with derision. Karen felt the blood freeze in her veins, her whole body numb. No words could justify her actions anymore. As the agents began to escort her out of the warehouse, the surrounding neighborhood suddenly became lively. Neighbors stood around, their eyes full of curiosity and judgment. Some couldn't hold back laughter, chuckling from the right side. "She's always causing trouble. She's done for this time." A man standing nearby spoke sarcastically. "I guess there's no HO law that's going to help her this time, huh?" An elderly woman standing at the corner of the street shook her head. "She's always sticking her nose in other people's business. Now she'll pay the price." The gossip never ceased, like a wave that swept away all of Karen's last hopes. Each step she took was watched, and the looks from the neighbors were full of judgment. They felt no sympathy, only amusement at a life that seemed to be over. The SUV slowly moved through the streets. Karen sat inside, her gaze dark, too afraid to look outside. Though she had been arrested, she still couldn't accept what was happening. The feeling of guilt lingered, leaving her as if lost in an empty space, with no way out. Weeks later, Karen was brought to court, where reporters and the public gathered in large numbers, the atmosphere tense. All eyes were on her, the woman who had dared to illegally enter federal property. The courtroom was silent, only the gavel echoing with every beat. In just a few minutes, the trial began. "Mrs. Thompson," the judge said, his voice stern, "you have unlawfully trespassed into a government facility. This is a serious offense." Karen bowed her head, her face pale and dejected. Despite the support from her lawyer, she knew she couldn't escape the punishment. She had never imagined that one impulsive act could lead to such serious consequences. "The court has decided," the judge continued, his gaze resolute. "The defendant will serve a 5-year prison sentence and will be processed under federal law." The courtroom fell silent, all eyes on Karen, who was staring in disbelief at the judge's words. She was escorted out, still shouting and yelling at the jury. "When this matter was concluded, everyone in my neighborhood began to gradually regain their peace." After the turmoil of the case, the neighborhood underwent a significant transformation. The newly elected neighborhood president, Mr. David Cooper, introduced many new initiatives to improve the quality of life. Several community projects were implemented, streets were renovated, and security was tighter than ever before. Life returned to its usual peace. Small parties and weekend gatherings began again. The people in the neighborhood now felt safer and more connected. The story of Karen, although still an unforgettable part of the previous months, slowly faded into the past as everyone focused on building a new, stronger community. As for the abandoned house, a large sign was erected in front of the door, with bold letters warning, Secure area. FBI controlled. No trespassing. Surely no Karen would dare approach it again. Peace had returned, but perhaps, in the neighborhood gossip, life would never forget the unexpected events that had occurred. What do you think of the story? Have you ever encountered a Karen like that? Leave a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe to the Karen Karma channel.